Asset risk management has become a red alert priority in companies in mining, oil and gas, heavy industry, and manufacturing. Well, welcome to Risk Radar, the Asset Risk Management podcast. Today, we're exploring emerging issues in asset risk management. So whether you're a risk analyst, a plant manager, or a chief risk officer, this podcast is for you. For businesses around the world, asset risk management is now an urgent priority. Our factories, facilities, plants, and machines are falling apart faster than we can fix them. Businesses struggle to secure workers to track and manage these systems and their environmental fallout. Well, today, we talk to experts about why making asset risk management a priority for your business is no longer optional. It's essential for a sustainable, profitable future. Emerging issues in asset risk management, next on Risk Radar. Now Barry Mitchel. It's true that asset risk management is a complex concept and construct in any company. How do we talk about asset risk management?
Well, again, risk is a very broad subject, and the discussions around it could be very complex depending on the size of your organization or your operation. You could be a small manufacturing firm, you could be a large global entity within the heavy industrial type of industry. So you could have experienced losses in the range of a few $1 million, could shut down your operation, or you could have hundreds of $1 millions, which could have a significant financial impact on your operation as well as surrounding communities. But following some 5 simple steps in establishing a good risk management framework starts with hazard identification. First and foremost, you need to understand what your risks are. The second thing is to assess the complexity of those risks and the potential for an impact on your organization. Third is implement some controls to manage that and reduce the potential for risk. Then evaluate the effectiveness of that and what that looks like, and then monitor and assess and continue with that cycle. Most importantly is aligning your risk management program with your overall business strategy.
I mean, there's obviously a framework through which you proceed with your analysis. But what are the blind spots that people miss in this? Andy, why don't you take that one?
The blind spots are the business impact of a single asset failure. We have customers that deal with operations that are the size of a small city. So they may have water desalination, water treatment, wastewater treatment, power systems that become even more complex over time. Think wind generation or photovoltaic cell systems for sun energy. So any one of those components with a failure could have a downstream impact on the overarching business. So we see quite often customers that don't understand the impact of those single failures.
So just to add a little more color to the blind spots, Anne, you were talking about a dishwasher situation that you've been in recently.
So in my corporate experience, a minimum of 5 dishwashers leaked, and with resultant damage and effects that had an impact far beyond the actual dishwasher itself. So if you think about a dishwasher, it looks all nice and shiny if it's stainless steel or it's behind a wooden cabinet to match, and typically whether it's a condo kitchen or a townhouse or any sorts of corporate kitchen. So what you have is parts that are not seen necessarily except when it's installed, and often those parts are plastic, and they can crack and cause damage. And so what happens is you have an enormous amount of water that can leak for a very long time, and depending on what floor you're on, it can run down the center of the building, it can go into an elevator shaft, and you ultimately result in having displaced people, clearing up costs, and all of a sudden something that's quite small and insignificant to what looks like the human eye now is costing millions of dollars.
I think it also expands even further because depending again on the environment of where it may be, if you're in an office complex, there's exposure to server rooms, data closets, and everything of other occupants within the building. And you as the responsible tenant or occupant of the facility in which the leak occurred, your responsibility is to all of those other folks below you and the other occupants and businesses within. So again, it doesn't matter whether you're in a condo facility, it could be artwork, it could be high valued items, it could be a number of different things that could again have a significant impact that isn't often thought about when you're in an office environment or even in your own residence.
Blind spots, Brian. 55% of these issues can be averted. as long as we monitor, measure, and manage them correctly. And we have the technology to do that today.
Incredible. Well, let's move now to where risk management sits in an organization. And I'll turn to you, Anne Chalmers. Who's holding the hot potato of risk in a company?
Well, traditionally, risk management is held by the risk manager, and depending on the organization, that risk manager may report in to a treasurer, a finance person, or legal head. But in reality, the more sophisticated industries, the risk manager has a direct line to the C-suite at an executive level, which is critical in today's environment of risks that are global in nature.
So as I understand it, traditionally, risk managers have been downstream of the executive function. As you mentioned, they report to finance or legal. But you're making the point, I think, that today it's time to put them at the big table. Why is that?
Their voice really needs to be heard as they are considered a subject matter expert. And so to be at the table, to be able to discuss an organization's business issues, that may be something that the executive level doesn't actually see on a day-to-day basis because it's occurring at a manufacturing plant or at an organization within the organization overseas or somewhere else. And so that voice of expertise can be heard, can campaign for budget money or other resources to help deal with the implications of what that risk issue is.
Right. Andy, we was talking earlier before the cameras were rolling, and you mentioned, the cognitive problem of seeing risk on a spreadsheet when we really need to be seeing risk in the field. Can you tell us a little bit about what you meant by that?
As much as it is important to be able to communicate the risk message at the executive table, being able to have that up and down the entire stream of the business is super important. So the people that are actually doing the work understand the overarching business risks and how they play a key role in helping to mitigate those risks is super important. And oftentimes those messages don't get down to the people that are actually doing the work day to day.
Help me illustrate that for me. How does that actually happen? Are we talking about a technician working with a saw blade or some other industrial component? What exactly do you mean by that?
Absolutely. A single risk, like around a saw blade failure, could be a $5 million business impact. They may not understand the overarching business impact because it's now taken down the entire line. So getting them to understand that their job is super important and that they're a critical success factor in the chain of risk is something that's not done well today.
Right, and we're going to be talking about communication in just a moment. So now that we've placed risk management within the corporate structure and we understand the importance of it, why don't we dig into some of the emerging challenges that we're seeing? And Andy, researching this program as I did, I was staggered by the statistics I came across in regards to the exposure that business globally is having to unmanaged risk. Tell us about it.
Brian, 65% of industry worldwide is dealing with aging and deteriorated infrastructure. And what that means is they're going to have to deal with an impaired asset. They're going to have to deal with an asset that fails. So we've got to help them build some resilience around that. And when those failures happen, they're often catastrophic. Could be for the entire business. So we have to understand that we're dealing with a lot of aging and deteriorated infrastructure and put risk mitigation in place to be able to deal with them so we can recover gracefully.
Well, it's not only about the infrastructure, is it? Because, we all wake up every morning, we listen to the news. There is a deteriorating security situation around the world, and that has to affect business too, doesn't it, Anne?
Absolutely. The world issues around global security and all of those subjects that fall into that impact business, not only in that jurisdiction where that may be happening, but also the resultant effect downstream. And that is also something to be well understood. Like an organization in one country needs to know that disruption in another country could impact their infrastructure or their product, revenue, whatever that might be.
You have your business hat on today, but I also know that you have many decades on the front line in risk management. So you know exactly what you're talking about. Can you give us some, perhaps examples or stories of what we're talking about? How a war or a security situation a world away can affect business here at home?
It could easily affect businesses at home, whether it's a supply chain issue that something is manufactured, computer chips in special plants around the world that aren't really available anywhere else, and all of a sudden that supply is impacted by war, resulting in ships not being able to be delivering to the supply route, and then all of a sudden, a company may only have a few weeks left of supply, and now they're in trouble. And the same thing holds with fuel and any other kind of product, and that could really be a problem that can impact your business.
So let me ask you this. Are there any telltale signs that you've learned to pick up over the years? Like, there's something not quite right here. There's something, because I guess the role of the risk manager is to anticipate and predict. I mean, once the thing's blown up in your face, it's all a little late at that point, isn't it?
It is a little late when it's already blown up. But the thing is when you are a true risk professional, you have a sixth sense about these things. And you are often sometimes affectionately referred to as Dr. Doom, or, oh, you can't possibly imagine all these things go wrong. But things do go wrong. And they go wrong when you're least expecting it. And they're sometimes the most strangest series of events that happen. And it's not necessarily a traditional risk. So yes, you learn to sort of look at everything and not be afraid to draw outside the boxes and things like that.
Right. Well, I look forward to getting into some of those examples a little later on. But Barry, if I could turn to you now. I mean, this is something that every business, small or large, is experiencing right now, and that is the scarcity of good trained personnel. Is that a risk?
That's definitely another emerging risk for sure. Is there's a significant shortage of global talent within the risk management field. And a lot of it has to do with the changing landscape, the complexity and the diversity of what that looks like. And as we mentioned before, risk is a very, very broad subject. So being able to find talent within a pool of qualified individuals, that either requires a significant amount of experience to understand some of those complexities. With that, the challenge for the organizations are that it drives the salary costs up. So with that, it presents the next thing is we need to have efficient training programs. Well, there again, that's an investment that's required on the part of the organization, whatever level they would be recruiting at. All of this equates to an additional risk. You invest money into this, or you pay higher salaries, then you run the risk of the retention component and or the loss of all of the business intelligence that comes along with that. So it's an ongoing challenge for sure within the industry.
But the flip side of that is that if you don't make the investment in those people, you risk having something go catastrophically wrong, and when you're not paying attention.
It's exactly true, and again, there's a multitude of examples that we could draw from. Some organizations believe in redundancy with respect to critical equipment, and the importance of having such. That just comes from experience and understanding criticality of what the nature of your business is. Doesn't matter whether it's a manufacturing facility for a woodworking organization or if it's in a higher heavy industrial application. You could have losses again in the millions and millions and millions of dollars with respect to that.
Yeah. It strikes me that the more I learn about this area and hear you talk, it's really a human problem, because we don't like to think about bad stuff happening, and yet we know that it's not only probable, but it's probably actually going to happen.
Often human error is a true element, but so too is technology. Yeah. And the reliance on both, you have to understand both aspects of it. Human error will always be there regardless, but technology can certainly mitigate a lot of that and reduce the likelihood of that.
Yeah, we're going to get to that in just one second, but I'd like to investigate this idea of communicating the risk effectively, especially at the big table in the C-suite, getting the eyes off the spreadsheets and onto the front line. So Anne, you have been on the front line for a number of years. What is the most effective way to get action on these issues?
Well, effective communication is really key in being able to explain the risks at a very high level without going into pages of detail. That is not necessarily where C-suites have time for, and immediately what the impact of those risks are to the business, and then probable fix, or in some cases you may not be able to fix it, you just have to be aware. Right. So you have to adjust your communication style depending on your audience, and you have to also repeat yourself. It just doesn't get heard the first time. You have to not be afraid to speak up.
Right. So do you have a secret technique that you've honed over the years to get the CEO's attention to actually take action? How do you get people to focus on something they really don't want to think about?
Well, you use examples, and there are plenty of business examples out there. This has happened to sister companies or competitors or other industries, but because it happened in that industry, it could very well happen in this industry. And there's enough information out there in statistics and examples of organizations around the world, or even not-for-profits as well, that you can use examples and make sense.
We've been discussing challenges in asset risk management, but nobody wants to hear a laundry list of problems. So Andy, what solutions can we bring to the table?
Well, let's take it back to blind spots, being able to create some visibility to blind spots within an industrial organization. Because ultimately, we want to monitor, measure, and manage what's happening with risk on the ground. Globally today, we have 3,300 IoT device companies. These devices are seeking a problem to solve. Of that, only 5%, 175 of them, have actually identified the problem that they're trying to solve. And of them, only 50 are solution-based. So it's a defined, very specific problem that they're trying to solve. So the advice that we give our customers is make sure we know the defined problem that we're trying to solve for, and then select the right solution to give you the visibility into that challenge.
Okay, so what you're saying then is that the way to solve asset risk management issues in companies now is a technological solution.
It's visibility. Often risk is managed in a spreadsheet, and what we have today is the incredible ability to connect your assets and let them speak for themselves. So you get unfiltered access to data around condition states of equipment. That's giving you visibility into those blind spots.
So up until now, it's just been sort of, figures on a spreadsheet, and what you're saying is through the application of technology, we can get a sense of what's really happening on the front line.
We get an immediate indicator of what's happening with the asset in situ, unfiltered by layers of management.
And how much of a game changer is that?
I think real-time visibility is a game changer. The ability to see what's happening from a confined space to a valve to your electrical switchgear is an amazing amount of capability for an industrial operation.
All right, we've been talking to the experts. Now it's time to hear from the people working on the front line. We got a question from Ben. Now, Ben is a COO in a facilities management company in the US. And Ben asks, what is the one thing I can do today to manage risk in my operation? So let's go around the table on this one. Andy, if you can kick us off, what is the one thing that Ben can do to manage risk in his facility?
Get out of a spreadsheet and actually start connecting the assets. That's the one thing that you could do with practical, easy to deploy technology today, is get visibility into what your assets are doing.
Okay, Anne?
Communicate, once you have that information that Andy shared about visibility, is pick your top 10 and communicate what you need in terms of people and financial resources or other things that you may need in order to manage those risks.
Okay, Barry?
I think, again, it goes back to the hazard identification, the analysis of understanding what your risks are, and determining the criticality of how that can impact your organization. Then determining the ability to either manage that impact in-house or possibly transfer that off to some other method and utilizing a risk management tool to do so. But again, I can't emphasize it enough. Understand your risk, understand what it is and the impact to your organization.
All right. You've been watching Risk Radar, the Asset Risk Management podcast. Now, I'd like to thank our sponsor, CoGo IoT. Now, trusted by industry leaders, CoGo safeguards your assets, protects your people, and enhances your operations. And you can learn more about CoGo and their technology at CoGo.Global. Next time, we'll be talking about technology and innovation in asset risk management. If you work on the front lines of risk management, we'd love to hear from you. Just leave a comment below. And if you'd like to be a guest on one of these programs, please do contact us. Don't forget to subscribe for more programs like this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.